Students for Life Ireland, and thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Outlook. Today, we're joined by Maria Oswalt, who's from a group called Rehumanize International. Maria, thanks so much for joining us today. What part of America are you speaking to us from?
Hi, Luke. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm in Alabama right now, in Northwest Alabama. It's about 9:30 a.m. here.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I forgot about the time difference. Thanks so much for getting up so early to speak to us.
Of course.
You might be surprised to learn that Rehumanize International have a bit of a following in Ireland. So I've been familiar with your content and your Facebook page for some time now. You describe yourselves as a human rights organization. Could you tell me a little bit about what sort of work you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So Rehumanize is a nonprofit that is dedicated to creating a culture of life and peace. And so in doing so, we try to bring an end to all aggressive violence against human beings in all stages of life and in all circumstances. So we do that we try to achieve that goal in three main ways, through education, discourse, and action. And so we publish a bi-monthly magazine. We publish white papers. We host an annual conference. We do speaking engagements on college campuses and outreach tours. We do podcast videos. And additionally, just general action like organizing and attending protests and collaborating with local groups as well. So just to kind of get to the root of it all, the philosophy that kind of underpins our vision and our work is something called the consistent life ethic, which is a consistent opposition to aggressive violence against human beings. And to clarify, by aggressive violence there, I mean violence as perpetrated by an aggressor. So that's to distinguish it from, say, like self-defense. There's certainly consistent life ethic people who consider themselves pacifists, but there's also room within the philosophy for reasonable and proportional self-defense. So I just wanted to clarify that a little bit there. But the consistent life ethic, therefore, covers a whole host of issues, everything from abortion to unjust war, the death penalty, torture, embryonic stem cell research, assisted suicide, and euthanasia, just kind of across the board, across the whole life spectrum.
Yeah. Cool. And have you always been pro-life yourself then, or how did you get involved in the group?
Yeah, so I would say I was kind of pro-life by default, but I clarified my viewpoint as I got older. I was raised in a conservative household, so I think just given the nature of the party system here, I just followed the party line, and so I considered myself pro-life, but really knew nothing about the issue. And it wasn't until I went away to university that I attended one of the meetings for the student pro-life group there, and I remember they were talking about statistics about abortion in Alabama, and they threw out the statistic that the local abortion clinic that was less than a mile from campus performed about 70 abortions a week. And I think that was the first time that I can remember hearing a number thrown out. Up until then, I thought that abortion was a very rare, small issue, like a minor issue. And so that really shook me. And it made me realize, okay, if this is affecting so many people, I should really know where I stand on it, and I should be strong in my position. So that spurred me to do more research, kind of researching the best arguments on both sides of the issue, as well as the medical side of what goes on in abortion, like the scientific reality of the humanity of the preborn. And I came out the other side of that just stronger than ever in my pro-life position. So I've just kind of been on fire for the cause since then.
And you've touched on it there about the divide right and left in the USA, and I suppose as a foreign spectator, that's something that I notice quite a bit when I look at the news relating to America, and that in Ireland it's quite different. So your average student in Ireland might be conservative on some issues or left-leaning on other issues, and people here for the most part are open to conversation, open to challenging themselves on their own views. I imagine the situation is quite different in the USA, as in I have cousins there, and they both seem very set in their ways, whether they're in the Democrats or the Republicans. So do you find, does that make it harder to communicate with people, or are most students open-minded and open to having their views challenged, or how does it work?
I think it's certainly a barrier that we have to kind of get over in conversation. And if we come at this specifically from a partisan viewpoint, that makes it much harder. And so part of our work at Rehumanize is we realize that we're trying to fight for every human. And so we realize we need to work with every human and kind of meet them where they're at. And so we work really hard to keep our organization non-sectarian and non-partisan in that, because we've found that that's the best way to approach people. If we kind of get to the root of these issues, like with abortion, getting to the root of human rights and who we believe, which human beings we believe are persons, and getting into all of the nitty gritty, that those barriers kind of fall away. Versus if you come up front treating this as a partisan issue, or kind of using the popular rhetoric from either of the major political parties, that can definitely make people shut down in conversation and less likely to listen. So I think it's possible to still have conversations there. It's just that the partisanship is definitely a barrier you have to kind of get over to get to the root of where we agree and where we disagree and where we can find common ground.
Absolutely. I really do. I really like the philosophy and the consistent life ethic. And I suppose it's something that I've noticed to an extent here as well. I mean, we were very fortunate in that we had a recent general election in February, and all of the 15 members of parliament, TDs as we call them, who voted against the abortion bill 2 years ago, all of them were returned, re-elected
Oh,
to our
wow.
House
That's incredible.
of Oireachtas. And when you know, like going through the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown and all of that, the pro-life TDs were really impressive. They were speaking up for the vulnerable, those in nursing homes, those with disabilities. I know you've touched on human trafficking there, and one of our most recognized pro-life senators, an independent senator, has done great work on human trafficking throughout his career. So it's fascinating to see the kind of that philosophy, maybe unbeknownst to people involved in Irish politics, at play. I know you're a graphic designer or an artist yourself,
Yeah.
and I'm just wondering, do you believe there's a way to use art as a means by which to communicate a life-affirming message to people, or how does that work?
Absolutely. I think art is a really, in all forms, in visual. So my specialty is in visual, but I think in all forms, visual, written, music, there's just a stronger ability to connect to people on a human level. And so it's such a powerful tool for rehumanizing the groups of human beings that have been historically dehumanized. Yeah, and funny you bring that up, because Rehumanize actually has an annual arts magazine that we publish called Create Encounter, that is all about that, just trying to encourage more pro-peace and pro-life art to rehumanize these various groups of human beings that have been dehumanized. And the deadline for that is actually tomorrow at 11:59 p.m. So if any of the viewers here have any pro-life work that they've created that they think is worthy of submission, give it a shot.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Um, well, look, that's all we have time for today. But thank you so
Okay,
much,
great.
Maria, for taking time at such an early hour of the morning to take part in this interview. And to everyone watching in, thank you for tuning in, and we hope you'll tune in again next week for our next episode of The Outlook. Stay safe.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. You too.